It's wild to think about, but what if one of the worst storms in history didn't just leave behind a ton of destruction? What if it actually gave birth to a brand new, revolutionary idea? Well, back in 1703, a terrifying natural disaster did exactly that. It kinda accidentally created the blueprint for modern journalism as we know it.
And look, this wasn't just, some bad weather. People at the time described it in almost biblical terms. Seriously, this was an event that completely shattered their whole understanding of what a storm could even be. For the people who lived through it, it was basically the apocalypse.
And here's the thing, it didn't just pop up out of nowhere. For 2 solid weeks leading up to the big one, the wind had just been getting stronger and stronger. People were already calling it terrible weather. Roof tiles were flying off, chimneys were collapsing, ships were getting lost. But believe it or not, that was just the warm-up act. The real nightmare kicked off around midnight on November 26th. It woke everybody up and then just kept getting worse. For hours, think about this, from 3 a.m. until almost 7 a.m., the storm was just raging with what people called its greatest excess. Can you imagine? Huddled in the pitch black for 4 straight hours, just listening to the world get ripped to shreds outside your window. So people were trapped in this absolutely terrifying choice. If you stayed inside, you risked being crushed as your own house fell apart on top of you. But if you went outside, that was basically suicide. Bricks, stones, roof tiles, they were flying through the air so fast and thick, they were like cannonballs. There was just no way out. And then, when the sun finally came up, it revealed a scene of just complete devastation. One writer put it perfectly. He said that no matter how bad people thought it was going to be, nobody could have believed even a tiny fraction of what they actually saw that morning. Just to give you an idea of the scale, in London alone, it was staggering. People at the time figured that more than 2,000 chimney stacks had been completely leveled. The entire skyline of the city was just violently changed overnight. And of course, this triggered immediate economic chaos. The price of essential building materials, things like plain roof tiles, it just exploded. They went from 21 shillings for 1,000 tiles to 120 shillings, literally overnight. So for most people, rebuilding wasn't just going to be hard, it was financially impossible. And this wasn't just happening in London, not by a long shot. The damage was everywhere. The brand new Eddington Lighthouse, which was this total marvel of engineering, was just gone, swept away into the sea. Then you hear these heartbreaking personal stories. A farmer blown off a ladder to his death, a young guy killed by a collapsing windmill. Entire forests were flattened. Even the huge lead roof of Westminster Abbey was rolled up by the wind like a scroll of parchment. Just unbelievable. So in the middle of all this chaos, you can imagine what happened next, right? Wild rumors started spreading just as fast as the storm itself. With all this destruction and so many crazy, conflicting stories flying around, how could anyone possibly know what really happened? How was history supposed to separate the facts from all the fiction? Okay, so this is where our main character steps onto the stage, a writer named Daniel Defoe. And yeah, that's the same guy who would go on to write Robinson Crusoe. He saw this absolute catastrophe, and he had this totally radical idea. He felt he had this deep, profound duty, not just to tell the story, but to tell it truthfully for everyone who would come after him. And what's so fascinating is just how seriously he took this. For Defoe, printing a lie wasn't just some small mistake. He saw it as an abuse of all of mankind, an attack on the whole world. He felt this incredible pressure to get the story of the Great Storm right because he knew that once it was in print, it was there forever. So he came up with this idea he called the duty of an historian. And it was basically a complete rejection of the kinds of history books that were popular back then. He thought they were just filled with, in his words, fable and mere romance. His goal was to create something totally new, a history built not on legends, but on the solid ground of real, verifiable eyewitness truth. But think about it. How could one guy possibly collect all that information from all over a country that was in ruins? Well, his answer was a method so brilliant, we'd probably call it crowdsourcing today. He basically invented investigative reporting hundreds of years before it was a thing. So here's what he did. First, he put out ads basically asking for eyewitnesses to send him their stories. Then he started gathering hundreds and hundreds of these personal letters. And he didn't just want dramatic stories either. He wanted hard data. He even included scientific stuff like barometer readings that track the drop in pressure. And here's the most important part. He published these accounts in the witnesses' own words.
He wanted to keep it real, to preserve that raw authenticity. What he was doing was actually shifting the entire power of storytelling. See, the history of the Great Storm wasn't going to be told by some single know-it-all author. No, it was going to be told by the actual people who lived through it. It was a collection of voices that, when you put them all together, created this incredible chorus of truth. This whole approach, it was a massive change in how people recorded history. It was a conscious decision to turn away from myths and legends and to take this huge step towards what we all now know as fact-based reporting.
And Defoe himself drew a really clear line in the sand. On one side, you had what he called fabulous history. You know, the fun but totally unreliable stories of King Arthur or St. George and the Dragon. But on the other side, you had what he called the veracity of the relation. And that was history built on things you could check. Signed letters, first-hand accounts, actual data. He was choosing fact over folklore, plain and simple.
Now, Defoe knew that the raw, simple truth might be, in his words, unfashionable. But he also believed it was deeply desirable. And so his book, The Storm, which was literally born from the wreckage of a national disaster, became this landmark text. You could absolutely argue it's one of the very first works of modern journalism.
Which kind of leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? Here we are, more than 300 years later, in our own age of instant information and, fake news. So what can we learn from Defoe's painstaking, methodical search for the truth? What does his project tell us about the lasting power and maybe even the profound duty of telling a true story?